Hey guys, it's Vadim with Max Tech and welcome to our new MacBook Pro buyer's guide. So as you guys probably know, Apple made their new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro configurators extremely complicated with various chip options with different core counts and features, as well as more options for RAM. So it's no wonder why many of you guys are commenting non-stop about which model to purchase. So this video is our official buyer's guide for the new M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros, where I'm gonna take you through the mistakes you need to avoid when buying one of these new Macs, and I'm also going to recommend different models for each use case, and I'm going to reveal the model that I bought for myself. So let's get right into it. First up, I know a lot of you guys are going to be tempted into making the mistake of going all out on the chip configuration that you buy when you really don't need to. So let me give you guys some perspective so you can make a rational decision. If you really think about it, the current M1 chip is already more than fast enough for most people, even those who actually do productivity work like photo editing, video editing, music production, programming, etc. For example, the M1 MacBook Pro literally outperformed our $15,000 Mac Pro in terms of Xcode programming performance. And in Lightroom Classic, it wasn't as good, but it outperformed the $2,400 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro, and it was keeping up with the crazy 27-inch desktop iMac. And for the most common 4K H.264 video editing work, the M1 chip closed the gap even further. So because of that, we actually replaced our main editing 27-inch iMac that Angelica used every day with a 24-inch M1 iMac that edits video even faster and more reliably than my $5,000 iMac Pro, which is mind-blowing. So the point that I'm trying to make is that the M1 is already more than powerful enough for most people. So if you think you need to go and fully spec out the new 14-inch MacBook Pro with 32 GPU cores and 64 gigs of RAM for $3,700, you're probably wrong. That machine is going to be overkill for 99% of the people out there, and chances are the base model 14-inch MacBook Pro with both a binned CPU and a GPU is going to be more than fast enough for a lot of people out there. Now, if you have no idea what the term binned means, I'm gonna explain that really quick because it's extremely important for this video. As you can see right here, I have a graphic of Apple's new M1 Pro chip labeled by AnandTech. And you can see the cluster of CPU performance cores right here and the cluster of GPU cores right here. Now, since nothing is perfect in life, sometimes there are imperfections in these chips. Like for example, a couple of the GPU cores have some flaws that impact performance. So instead of tossing this chip in the trash can and losing all of that investment, Apple simply disables those two flawed cores, turning the 10-core chip into an 8-core, and then they sell it at a discount to make it cheaper for consumers. Now, the same thing can be applied to the GPU cores, with Apple disabling 2 of them instead of tossing out the chip entirely, creating a 14-core GPU. And that's how we ended up with the double binned base model 14-inch MacBook Pro for $2,000, with you having to pay an extra $300 just to get a perfect unbinned chip. And this also applies to that 24-core GPU upgrade for $500. It's really just a 32-core M1 Max chip with 8 of the cores disabled, so Apple can offer you a cheaper upgrade option. Now, with all that said and explained, I want to mention to you guys that we bought 8 different M1 Pro and M1 Max configurations, so we can deliver the best comparison videos out there. So if you appreciate our efforts, subscribe right now and definitely check out our merch like this Sharpie edition t-shirt down in the merch shelf below, and be sure to use the M1 Pro promo code to save 20% on all of our merch. With that said, let's move on to the next mistake, which is actually thinking that these MacBook MacBook Pros are overpriced compared to buying an M1 MacBook Pro, which is completely wrong. The M1 MacBook Pro starts at $1,300 and comes with only 256 gigs of SSD and 8 gigs of RAM. Now, if you want to match the same 512 gig SSD and 16 gigs of RAM as the new 14-inch base model has, the price of the M1 goes up to $1,700, only $300 shy of the 14-inch. So let me quickly fly through all of the advantages you get for that extra $300. Of course, you get the new design language with the flat top and bottom, you get much more ports including an extra Thunderbolt 4 port, an SD card slot, an HDMI port, and of course MagSafe charging. The 512GB SSD is actually much faster on the 14-inch since it uses newer technology. The 16GB of RAM is also much faster using LPDDR5 6200MHz RAM instead of the older and slower LPDDR4X 4266 MHz RAM. Then on top of that, add in the larger 14.2-inch display with a 3K resolution instead of 2.5K, as well as the new mini LED display technology that can go up to 600 nits of brightness compared to just 500, and then add in the ProMotion 120Hz display refresh rate tech, making it basically the best display in any laptop ever. Then of course, you've got the much better 1080p webcam that takes in 2 times more light for a cleaner image, then add in much better quality speakers and other details like a new 3.5mm headphone jack that supports higher impedance, which kind of sounds like it has a built-in DAC. Then you add in the new keyboard with a full set of function keys that replaces the touch bar, as well as the new cooling system that moves 50% more air and the upgraded external display support as well. And of course, don't forget the much faster M1 Pro chip, even the one with the binned 8-core CPU and 14-core GPU. So in reality, that extra $300 for the base 14-inch is an absolute no-brainer if you're already buying a similarly spec'd M1 MacBook Pro. And I'd even go as far as to say that everyone should be avoiding the M1 MacBook Pro at all costs, if at all possible. So either buy the M1 MacBook Air on sale on Amazon for $929 right now, or go straight to the 14-inch MacBook Pro for $2,000. I'm not even kidding, it's worth it. Now with all of that said, if you're already dead set on buying one of these new MacBook Pros, let's jump right into the configurator, starting with the base 14-inch model. This model is meant for almost everybody who does even a decent amount of hobby productivity work, since it's gonna fly through many of those common tasks. However, the first thing I would do is go down to the power adapter options and pay the extra 20 bucks for the 96-watt power adapter, because it gives you the 50% fast charging in 30 minutes feature. And as far as the RAM, I honestly think that for most people, 16 gigs of unified memory is gonna be perfectly fine, because first of all, it's much faster this year, and we've already proven that Apple's unified memory in the M1 Max is incredibly efficient at handling massive workloads compared to 16 gigs of traditional RAM in a Windows laptop, as you can see in this chart. On top of that, the SSDs in these MacBook Pros are much faster, which will also greatly improve the performance of SSD caching, which acts as makeshift memory if you ever do run a bit low on RAM. So I would recommend 16 gigs for most people, unless you want to buy it for the very long term and you really like the extra peace of mind of having 32 gigs. Now on top of that, both the 14 and 16-inch models come with 512 gigs of SSD, and I would honestly recommend everyone to spend the extra $200 for the 1TB SSD option, because it's just such a good bang for the buck. But I definitely recommend holding off on buying the crazy SSD options like the 8TB SSD, because it's insanely expensive and most people just won't be able to fill it up. Instead, you could literally buy a 4TB external Thunderbolt 3 SSD for only $700 on Amazon right now if you want to store files for the long term, so I'm gonna leave a link down in the description if you're interested. But with that said, let's pivot over to the chip options, just in case you're willing to venture away from the base model and pay for some chip upgrades, which I would definitely recommend if you're actually using your Mac professionally for business or to make money. First of all, if you pay the extra $300 to get the unbinned M1 Pro chip with the 10-core CPU and the 16-core GPU, you need to realize that you are now only $200 away from the base $2,500 starting price of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is a much better buy because you're getting a larger display with higher resolution, quite a bit better battery life, a much more powerful 140-watt power adapter, and a larger and more useful trackpad, which I think together make it a no-brainer for $200 more. So because of that, I think anyone willing to spend $300 on that chip upgrade on the 14-inch should just jump straight to the 16-inch MacBook Pro unless you really want the smaller 14-inch size for portability. And if that's the case for you, here are the chip upgrades that I would recommend for the 14-inch. First of all, if you're someone who mainly relies on CPU performance for things like programming, music production, or photo editing, then I'd say the $200 upgrade to get a 10-core CPU is definitely worth it because the crazy M1 Max chip won't really do that much for you since you don't need the extra graphics power. Instead, upgrading to 32 gigabytes of RAM is a smart choice for all of those professional tasks because they can use a lot of memory, especially high-end photo editing. But as far as upgrading to 64 gigs of RAM, I don't think it's worth it for 99% of the people out there because you're forced to first upgrade to the 24-core M1 Max chip before spending another $400 to upgrade to 64 gigs of RAM, bringing the price up to $3,300 for a 14-inch. So only go with 64 gigs if you absolutely know you need it, like if you're gonna be running VMs or doing the craziest graphics rendering out there. And that finally brings us to the graphics side of the equation with the M1 Max chip and who should actually be buying it. But before I get into that, I wanna put something into perspective. The base $2,500 16-inch MacBook Pro model is so powerful that it actually outperforms the very best $3,500 i9 Intel 16-inch MacBook Pro in terms of CPU performance, and it outperforms the insanely expensive $800 Radeon Pro 5600M upgrade. So comparing the new 16-inch to the previous one, you're getting more performance in every aspect, alongside a bunch of extra features like the display and 10 extra hours of battery life for literally $1,000 less than before with that base $2,500 model, so keep that in mind. Now moving on to very high-end graphics-related use cases, if you're dead set on buying 32 gigs of RAM, either for the 14 or 16-inch model, you should absolutely, hands down, spend $200 on the 24-core M1 Max chip upgrade. You're first of all gonna get 50% higher graphics performance instantly for just $200 more, but on top of that, you're getting better external display support, you're getting a larger cooling system to cover the larger chip, and you're literally getting double the video encode engines and double the ProRes encode and decode engines. Now that last part is absolutely huge for video editors because most video exports are actually limited by those encoders. As you can see in this chart, where the much more expensive Macs with much faster graphics barely improved export times, and even the M1 chip was limited by the encoders. So there's a pretty good chance that the much faster 16-core GPU in the M1 Pro isn't gonna export videos that much faster than the regular M1 chip. But since the M1 Max chip features double the encode engines, it's likely gonna export videos at least twice as fast as the M1 Pro chip, and that goes for ProRes work as well. So if you're editing and exporting many videos per week, or you want those other advantages, just pay the extra $200 for the 24-core M1 Max chip. And now let's finish off with who should be buying the insane 32-core GPU. Well, if you're a gamer and you want the fast fastest possible gaming performance, buy the 32 core for sure, and you'll likely be just fine with the standard 32 gigs of RAM. Now, if you're doing very high-end graphics-related work, like 3D rendering or editing raw video, which is extremely GPU intensive, then you should also be buying the 32 core GPU, and in those cases, 64 gigabytes of RAM might actually make sense if you know you can use it. But like I mentioned earlier in this video, if you're not gonna be making money or doing professional work with one of these MacBook Pros, then you'll likely be just fine with even the base 14-inch MacBook Pro for $2,000. So hopefully this video helped you make a decision, and if it did, go ahead and use the links down below for the best deals on those MacBook Pros and SSD accessories, and be sure to click the circle above to subscribe for more videos like this one. Definitely check out our merch with the M1 Pro promo code. Check out one of those 2 videos right there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
What?
Is this the eating table?
Nope.
No,
it's not the
this
eating
is
table.
the video recording
Over
table.
here.